Have you ever wondered why the Second World War is considered to have started on September 1, 1939? Anyone who studied at school will say that the war started with Hitler's attack on Poland and the matter is closed. But the fact is that school textbooks are a propaganda tool, but in reality everything was completely different. Hey there, this is Nikiteev, and today I will tell you when the Second World War really began and who benefits from hiding it. Back in 1938, a history textbook was published in the USSR, in which it was written, "All these facts show that the Second Imperialist War has in fact already begun." That is even before the official start of the Second World War. The communists knew for sure that the war had already broken out. But what facts are we talking about, and why did we think so? The first fact is Fascist Italy invasion of Ethiopia in 1935. There was no reason for the attack except for the desire of Italy to expand its colonies. Nearly 1 million Ethiopians died from Mussolini's action, including 180,000 killed and executed in concentration camps. The narcissistic Duce immediately became an important bird on the world stage, having made revenge for Italy's loss in the First War with Ethiopia. The second fact was the military intervention of Germany and Italy in Spain in the summer of 1936. Under the guise of supporting the Spanish fascists, Hitler and Mussolini brought the fleet into the territorial waters of Spain and captured Gibraltar. Thus, on the shortest route from Europe to Asia, two hotbeds of war ensued. And finally, the third fact is the Japanese attack on China in the summer of 1937. Everyone is taught in school that World War II ended with the defeat of Japan. But why then did it begin with the German invasion of Poland and not with the Japanese attack on China 2 years earlier? Or according to historians, the Chinese are second-rate people and are not taken into account. From these facts, it follows that even before Hitler's attack on Poland, the Second World War was already in full swing. And in the same Soviet textbook, when we wrote, "The war is going on in a vast area from Gibraltar to Shanghai," the war has already drawn more than 500 million people into its orbit. Ultimately, it goes against the capitalist interests of England, France and the USA, since it aims at redistributing the world and spheres of influence in favor of aggressive countries and at the expense of these so-called democratic states. But 500 million lived in China alone. At that time, already a third of the world's population was at war. A naive person may say that the start date is considered to be precisely the moment the imperialist power, namely France and England, entered the war. But the fact that one side has not declared war does not mean that there is no war. A distinctive feature of the beginning of this conflict was that the hostilities were conducted by aggressive powers at the moment while the democratic countries, in quotation marks, pretended that the war did not concern them. Praised their peacefulness, although all the actions of the aggressors in the end were directed against the peacekeepers. But no matter how much the former victorious countries wanted it, they had to enter the war, but only when it was too late. Mobilized Germany was ready for a long-term conflict. So, Why, according to official historians, did the war start not in 1945 and not more logically in 1947, but precisely in 1939? And all because already at the beginning of 1938, with the full approval of England, the German Nazis captured Austria. And in the autumn of the same year, the Munich Agreement took place, when, with the full approval of England and France, Czechoslovakia was destroyed. Germany, Poland, and Hungary will participate in the division of the territory. The Soviet Union will then make a timid attempt to defend Czechoslovakia, but Poland will not allow the troops to pass. British Prime Minister Chamberlain assured Hitler that he could have everything without war and without delay. How horrible, fantastic, incredible it is that we should be digging trenches and trying on gas masks here because of a quarrel in a faraway country between people of whom we know nothing. It seems still more impossible that a quarrel which has already been settled in principle should be the subject of war. We settled the quarrel well, fed Czechoslovakia to the jackals, and thought that they would stop there. Churchill, on the other hand, will declare that we were defeated without starting a war. In the same year, 1938, immediately after the Munich Agreement, the Anglo-German Declaration was signed, which was essentially a non-aggression pact between England and Germany. In December 1938, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was signed, a declaration of non-aggression between France and Germany. Thus, Germany was given completely freedom of action in relation to the eastern countries. After that, throughout 1939, non-aggression and friendship treaties between Nazi Germany and other European countries will be concluded. And just before the attack on Poland, in order to avoid a war on two fronts, in August 1939, an agreement would be concluded between the USSR and Germany, the so-called Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The Soviet Union is still accused of having signed a secret agreement according to which part of Poland, the Baltic states, and Bessarabia were included in a zone of Soviet influence. Apparently, it was necessary, as in the case of Munich Agreement, to do everything openly, when no one would have any complaints. And only when Hitler attacks Poland, France and Great Britain declare war on Germany, but continue to do nothing. Just watch how Poland is destroyed. The US declares neutrality, and the Soviet Union, taking advantage of the opportunity, takes revenge for the shame in 1920 and regains Western Ukraine and Western Belarus, and after that starts the Winter War. And only after the defeat of France, when the war with Germany becomes inevitable, the USSR forcibly annexes the Baltic states. Subsequently, these events will be called occupation and annexation. Hence, it is clear why in the West the date of the beginning of the war is considered September 1, 1939. According to their logic, it turns out that as soon as Hitler and Stalin agreed, that Germany and the USSR attacked Poland and tore it to pieces. And the lights of democracy declared war on the main villain. Meanwhile, another villain began to conquer our countries with impunity. But when the villains quarreled, began to fight with each other, when the United States intervened and saved everyone, and was helping Hitler and making treaties with him by England and France are not part of the Second World War. But the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and the aggression of the USSR are already part of the Second World War. But in fact, the one-sided nature of the war before 1940 is due solely to the fear of the ruling circles of Great Britain and France before the labor movement. They believed that fascism or National Socialism was a good antidote to communist movements. In addition, the war between Germany and Russia was a dream for democratic countries. But everything did not go according to plan, and after Poland came the turn of France. It is clear why in the West they choose September 1, 1949 as the date for the start of the war. It is beneficial for them. But why did they do it in the USSR? Why was the date of the start of the war postponed, if back in 1938 the Bolsheviks believed that it was already underway? The fact is that within the framework of Khrushchev's campaign to debunk Stalin's personality cult, a radical revision of the view of the past took place. Since the history textbook was personally edited by Comrade Stalin, such history ceased to correspond to a party line. After the 20th Congress of the CPSU, the thesis was introduced into the textbooks that the Second World War began on September 1, 1939, with Hitler's attack on Poland. Thus, Poland, from the country of the aggressor, immediately turned into an innocent victim. Mr. Khrushchev spent his whole life trying to denigrate the past of his country and curry favor with the Americans and the British. After his resignation, he published memoirs in the West, in which he announced the presence of a conspiracy between Stalin and Hitler on the partition of Poland. On a personal whim, he revealed a secret of national importance. Thus, he brought his own country under Article 6 of the Charter of the International Tribunal. For more information on how Nikita Khrushchev spoiled his country, watch the video How Khrushchev Destroyed the USSR. Even according to the Nuremberg Tribunal, November 5, 1937 is considered the starting point for the start of aggression and hence the start of the war. When a meeting was held under the leadership of Hitler and a decision was made to forcibly annex Austria, Czechoslovakia, and further move east. And according to the same tribunal, since 1944, Poland has been an ally of Hitler. But the question of Poland's guilt in the war was not considered in detail, because when Great Britain and France would also be in the dark. This is how history is slowly being rewritten and concepts are being replaced. Khrushchev, with his wrecking actions, laid the foundations for the destruction of the USSR, including the choice of such a date for the start of the war. And when the inertia of thinking worked, something to change in the textbook is not considered necessary and important. In addition, until recently Russia and Europe were brothers forever. For example, the Chinese consider the Japanese invasion in 1937 to be the beginning of the Second World War, and they do not care about the opinion of the Western world. Now we still know who and why unleashed World War II, but over time the population will be instilled with the idea that Stalin and Hitler are the same people and the USSR is to blame for the war. Drop by drop, We will be hammered into it from television screens, or another Yeltsin will finally come to power and rewrite textbooks, and no one will resist. But from those who are really interested in history, the truth cannot be hidden. The facts are a stubborn thing. If you liked the video, put like, check out my channel for more interesting stuff, subscribe to not miss new videos, and have a nice day!